it would be valuable to have more conservative voices, because I think that's what's missing here, right? Like I think we have a ton of left activism that even happens here, and that that gets out the vote of that loud minority, and they are making changes, like they're succeeding.
Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Welcome to another episode of the 435 podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland. Today I had local Gary Henderson. He's an avid Jeep fan. He hosts a podcast called the Jeepcast. I encourage you guys to tune in. It's on all the podcast sites that you guys can imagine. Jeepcast, find him there. We talked all about local politics. We talked about politics in general. It was really a great opportunity to get to know him as his political beliefs and his system. Challenged me on a bunch of things. I learned a lot. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Make sure that you guys have a great year. It's a new year. Hit those resolutions, run them all the way to the end. Don't finish them 2 weeks like everybody else does. Enjoy the episode, guys, and we're going to get to it. Tell me just a little bit about you, because this is the first time we've ever met face to face. We never even spoke on the phone or anything.
Right.
I have just so little information that I know just about you. So I'm curious, but maybe anybody listening in, who's Gary Henderson?
Yeah, we should do that both ways.
Yeah,
I want to learn
sure.
a little bit about you as well. I think just like you said, I haven't talked to you before. Maybe one time briefly. I don't remember exactly. But anyway, yeah, my name is Gary Henderson. Recently moved to St. George about a year and a half ago now.
Cool.
Came here from Western Washington.
Okay.
And you could see the writing on the wall for a long time.
Yeah.
How people were voting and how the political landscape was changing and how Seattle was getting crazy. And, that was encroaching, out. I didn't live in Seattle, live in a suburb, which is fine. And it was fantastic. I loved it. Had a great house, had a great life. Could have kept living there. Yeah. But we also have now she's 12, but at the time, 10 and 11. And,
grandkid, daughter?
No, my daughter.
Daughter? Okay. Yeah.
Thanks though.
Oh, I wasn't.
No, that's fantastic.
I made an assumption there. All
right. And when they start going after the kids, then it's like, okay, well, I could handle anything that you throw at me, right? Whatever you want to do to me, you want to raise taxes, you want to, take away freedoms, you want to do whatever. Like I could handle all of that.
Yeah.
I could trade, the beautiful house that I lived in, and the benefits of all of it and all my friends and family there. And I could trade all of that. Or I'm saying I could, it's not trading. I could trade,
navigate the waters,
deal with all of the issues for the benefits that I had. But once you start coming after my kids, then it's like, okay, well, we can take you out of public school, which we did. All right. Now you're out of public school. So the trans ideology stuff that they're teaching to 4th and 5th graders. Yeah. Right. Where there's books with graphic information, shown to kids. There's no place for that. Right. So we go to private school, and it turns out that it's not so different. Yeah. Right. Because the people running even the private schools are the same people that vote for all these crazy policies. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, well, now what? Yeah. Right. And I had actually been quite interested in St. George for a long time. I'm an avid off-roader. I'm big into the Jeep scene, and we can talk about all of the things that entails. And
is that what brought you to St. George?
It made me interested. It made me interested in this area, right? I mean, like it's an amazing outdoor lifestyle here. I mean, there's so much to do. Yeah. And so, it's fantastic. So we love it. I tried to convince my wife for at least 2.5, 3 years probably to move here. And it took that long to kind of, get everything settled. And so we moved out here, and it's a beautiful place. It's fantastic. St. George, Southern Utah is, I'll tell people all the time, they're like, oh, well, gosh, it's hot there. I'm like, yeah, it's hot in the summer. There's a couple of months where it's pretty crazy. But the people and the culture, I mean, it was fantastic. You go from, in Seattle, there's such a thing called, have you ever heard of Seattle freeze? So, people walk down the street with their eyes down. Yeah. You are afraid to make eye contact.
Yeah.
Don't you dare say hi to somebody as you're walking by.
Yeah.
Because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't always like that.
It wasn't always like that.
Wasn't
I
always
mean,
like
some
that.
people argue that Seattle freeze has been around for a long time, that people are standoffish.
Yeah.
By nature, and that
Lack of vitamin D. It gets cloudy.
If you want to get scientific about it, maybe.
I don't know. I think there's something to be said for what it takes to be outgoing and to engage with people. I think you got to be in a right mind space, and maybe because of it being a little gloomy, because I think there's some data around the cloudier regions not necessarily being just in general as friendly, but I guess that probably isn't always true.
I mean, I have not looked into the vitamin D relationship to friendliness. But I think it could be a reason, but I think there's also a lot of other reasons too, right? I mean, like, I think, as crime rises, you want to just stay away from other people, right? And like, you don't know, somebody walking down the street, wearing sunglasses, you can't see their eyes. You don't know what's behind those sunglasses. Yeah. Right. Wearing a hoodie, you don't know what's underneath the hoodie. Yeah. And people, I think, are afraid, and so as crime rises, and as, people vote in politicians that want to defund the police and criminalize self-defense, then people are afraid. Yeah. And if you're afraid, you try to just stay to yourself. So I mean, I think that's a factor. I don't know how much the sun has to do with it. I mean, sure it does. I would probably, if I were gambling, I would probably say, that probably is pretty likely too.
But it's a complex.
Is that me or you?
Oh, it's maybe me. Okay. Oh, it's me. It's just buzzing.
I'm gonna go into airplane mode.
I think it says something about how somebody told me something about a climate. What climate is? What's the climate, right? And I feel like I'm saying it weird, but climate.
I'm following you.
It's all of the factors. It's this complexity of things that are happening in the world, right? It's the way the population, what they thought before they got there. It might be that criminal element to it. It might be what is their family situation like, right? Is there a strong sense of community in that area? Is there environmental reasons, right? All of these things, there's so many data sets and data points to try and pinpoint, but it's almost like a computer in a sense where all of these things are working together in creating this output, which is the environment in Seattle, which I understand. And I've really only heard anecdotally. I've never even visited Seattle.
It was once a beautiful place to go. I mean, we would love our day trips into Seattle. Yeah. And being able to walk the streets anywhere. Yeah. And it's no longer that case.
It's no longer that case. So then you moved here. So going back, what did you do for work there? And then what are you doing for work now?
So I was in the software space for 26 years. Okay. So worked at Microsoft and Amazon.
Okay, cool.
Built some awesome stuff. I'm really proud of the things that I worked on. Built some things, especially Microsoft. You have the ability to have the reach to, if you're working on something in Windows, there's a billion Windows users. Yeah. There's not very many people that get to sit back and say, I built something that a billion people use. Yeah. And not only that, but like if you're working on a feature in Windows, you might work on something that somebody comes across, once a year, or something very infrequently. Yeah. Right. Or you work on something that maybe somebody sees every day, right? Like you're working on Windows Explorer or, Internet Explorer or Edge, or, you working on something that people see every single day. Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to work on something that, people see fairly regularly. Yeah. So even though, it's neat because even though I've left, and things evolve, of course, over time, there's always innovations. Right. You can see that there's still stuff that I invented that are still sitting there.
That's awesome.
And so, I'm proud of it, and I consider myself, if I have to put a label on me about like, what did I do as my career? It's inventor. That's probably the thing that I'm the most proud of. Yeah. I have a number of inventions at Microsoft, and then finally they issued a patent for something that I worked on at Amazon. So, these things take forever, right? So I'm, 3 years removed, and I finally got a patent for stuff at Amazon. At Amazon, I worked on Alexa. So,
cool.
It's something that
I just was listening to,
again, everybody uses it, right?
Lex Friedman had Jeff Bezos on, and it's a podcast, and they talked for like 2 hours, but he was talking about, he identifies himself as an inventor, which is interesting, because in that software space, if you look at Microsoft and Amazon together, the businesses as a whole, that's like from the top down, right? You think of the founders of the company, and then their progress over the last, Microsoft over decades, Amazon really over the last couple of decades. I can imagine that a lot of the people they employ are also that type, right? That they just having somebody has to think outside the box, that's looking at, things from multi-layers and multiple different angles. And so, and that actually tells me a little bit, and helps me understand a little bit too, how you view, the political side of things, and so thinking about you're coming from this political environment that's chaotic and really a collapse of a once, you had life in Seattle that was pretty idyllic, right? It was everything
good.
seemed to work pretty good, and then you watched it kind of fall apart. And then coming to St. George, our politics are, just a complete opposite. At least from the local, like what the locals perceive as what their beliefs are, right? You go, predominantly blue to predominantly red, and I can see how that was attractive.
Yeah, but so I get here, and I'm part of my thinking, was, hey, I want to get to freedom country.
Mm-hmm.
And where it's free, and from the outside and talking to some people, not as in depth of a view as I needed, but I'm like, yes, Southern Utah is freedom country, so we got to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But getting here, I kind of realize the political landscape here is fairly fragile. It is not as conservative as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
St. George, you have a liberal mayor, and you have several liberal council members. And I think we'll get into this. There's a couple of things about, well, I don't know. We can keep moving, I guess. And there's very little difference between somebody who says they're conservative but doesn't do conservative things and a liberal.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little difference in that. To be conservative now, like the days of being a conservative and saying, oh, I just want to keep to myself, and I want small government, and I want everybody to leave me alone. Like, those days are over. Like, that's not being a conservative anymore, because now you're just sitting back, allowing the left to keep trampling on conservative values.
Mm-hmm.
To be a conservative, you have to be ready to fight for conservative values.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not doing that, you're no longer conservative, because there's no point in being a conservative and saying, and not fighting. Because why? Like you're just letting people move the ball, down the field in the other direction, and you're like, oh, well, I'm just trying to be nice. I just want to be a nice person, right? Well, how's that conservative? Because we've lost so much ground, and even here, we've lost so much ground that we need to fight to actually restore conservative values.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's see. There was something that I wanted to go back and talk about with Seattle, but anyway, we've moved on. That's fine. So I get here, and I think I see things as different now. And, I never really got involved in my whole life, politically.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question too. Yeah. So maybe help me understand just where have you been?
Yeah.
Were you fairly active politically there?
No. I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing about being involved politically, right? Most people, don't want to be involved in politics at all, right? Yeah. They don't know what's going on in the news, or they do know, maybe it's because they watch the, 20 and 30 second sound bites that, that broadcast news gives you at 5 and 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
That doesn't teach anything. It just tells you what they want you to think about what's going on.
Yeah.
And so most people aren't really politically mindful at all, right? So that's your largest group of people.
Yeah.
Then your next group of people
What would you say the percentage is?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Probably greater than 50%, like 50 to 60% maybe.
I was going to say 70.
Yeah. It could be up there.
Yeah.
By far the largest group of people is people that aren't really motivated to.
Have you heard the Pareto principle?
No.
So it's 20% of your actions will yield 80% of your results. And 80% of your actions will yield only 20% of your results.
Sure.
Right. And so it's this idea that this 80-20 rule kind of comes into a like highlight. You can see this operate in a lot of different ways. And I kind of look at it, politics in the same way, is that like 20% are going to be engaged in influencing what's going on, and 80% are kind of sitting around being like, well, this going to require a lot of education and research outside of extraordinary research to even feel like I'm competent enough to move the ball down the field. So I don't want to deal with that. I got enough problems just, taking the kid to football practice and, what all those other things happen.
No, definitely I've heard about the 80-20 rule. I can see how you apply it to, or it can be applied to politics. I think we use it all the time in software.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's I think it's one of the Six Sigma like processes too, right? So anyway, keep going. But that's kind of where I came up with the number is like 70. I don't know if it's quite, 20%, maybe 30% are going to be involved, but based off my engagement on the political side, I think just for this year, we had so little engagement.
I think in terms of engagement, I think you're right. I think I was more talking about just being politically aware. So just learning about issues. So it's probably smaller than 80% that are completely unaware. Greater than 20% that are at least paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, what I was saying though is those people that start paying attention, that next group is people that are paying attention to national issues, right? Like what's going on in the federal government. And and I don't know, why is that? Is it the sexiest part? Is it, the biggest impact? Is it, the national culture issues? I think it has to do with the media. I think it has to do with who's talking about it. Like if attention is this resource of giving that information out. Right.
The media, there's no money in talking about local politics because it's such a small pool.
For sure.
Right. Yeah.
Your people that become very popular as political commentators have to talk about national issues to have the broadest reach possible.
To get a broad reach. Yeah, exactly.
So maybe that's why that information is more readily available. You search on something on the internet, you listen to podcasts, you watch, cable news or whatever news you're watching, national issues are going to come up first. And so I think
even local news, we're not getting anything in Southern Utah. Like they don't talk about us.
I wouldn't know. I don't watch any local TV. I don't watch TV.
I don't watch local. I don't watch. I would agree. I also do not do that.
Right. So I have no idea what they're talking about.
They're not getting it. Okay. They're not getting it there.
So I'm not missing anything.
No.
And then the next group of people, again, and now you're talking about much smaller than even the people that are paying attention to national issues are paying attention to state issues. And almost nobody pays attention to city issues, right? And so, so when I was in Seattle, I was fairly well versed on national issues, right? I mean, and it kind of went in cycles. Like there were times, in the 90s were you born in the 90s?
I was 87.
Okay.
I was born 1987.
So in the 90s, I was heavily engaged in politics, and then I took a big break. It's just kind of maybe burned out, maybe.
I know. I made the assumption because I dropped a boomer comment when we were engaging on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, we did.
I just made the assumption. It was shame on me. And then you said you were Gen X, which I think is a great conversation too to go into. And then I was like, oh, that makes more sense. That makes more. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. This makes more sense. So that's why you were engaged in the 90s.
For sure.
Yeah. Which was an important era in politics too. So, what fired you up in the 90s?
Wow. What? I don't know. Was it the Clinton presidency? Was it, man, I almost wonder if it was, this can't be, but just when you ask that question, the first flash that comes to my mind is now I'm maybe going to forget his name. Was it Judge Sporkin? I think it was Judge Sporkin. He's the guy. And even our what was the set? Orrin Hatch.
Orrin Hatch, yeah.
Orrin Hatch. These are the guys that came after Microsoft. The first year that I got employed there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck are these guys doing?
Yeah. Who are these people?
Who are these? And so I was then pro Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the consent decree and all the lawsuit stuff there, maybe that's what sparked it. I can't remember, honestly. I remember having a lot of political conversations, and those are the times where there was like a lot of things, right? I mean, like I had political conversations with people about, this was like the beginnings of conversations around things like gay marriage, right? And I'm like, yeah, why not? And you'd go and you talk to like conservative friends, they'd be all upset about it. I'm like, well, of course they should. Like,
yeah.
And I don't know, this is kind of a joke, and I don't know, maybe your audience will appreciate it, or maybe not. But I was kind of like, hey, why should they not have to engage in the challenges of marriage?
Yeah, right.
Why leave it to straight people to have 50% divorce rates?
Yeah, there's an argument to be made,
right?
There,
They let them go through the same heck that we're all going through as well.
Yeah.
That straight people go. Luckily, I haven't gone through that. I've been happily married.
Marriage is difficult
for a lot of years.
I'm happily married. We're coming up on 10 years next year, and it's hard though. But to your point, that commitment and what that actually means, it's not you could be happily married, but it doesn't absolve you of the challenges that ultimately an individual growing, two individuals growing, and oftentimes, especially when you have if they both have careers, that could be difficult. And then if you have one that's a stay-at-home mom, my wife, she stays at home with the boys, and me working, we were talking about our conversations, at night and what they are now versus 10 years ago when we didn't have kids, and like we were working basically the same job. So we could, all of the communication continuity was just all there. It was just so easy. And then now it's like, I have to download to her all these things that she doesn't know context to, and she does the same thing, with me. And it's a challenge. So to your point, why should we just limit that to straight people? Why having
everybody can engage in that. So anyway, we've gone a little bit on me. Catch me up with you. What got you to St. George?
So we moved in St. George 2015 from Southern California. My wife was born and raised there.
Whereabouts?
Orange County.
So, okay.
Katie, my wife, was born and raised in Orange, city of Orange. Mm-hmm. She lived in one house her whole life.
Yeah.
And we met bartending. So I was bartender, server. We met at the restaurant, and we dated for 7-8 years before we got married. But I was born in Sandy. I went to a boarding school, a military boarding school in Roswell, New Mexico Military Institute. Shout out to the Colts and the Broncos. It was a high school and a junior college. It's the only junior college ROTC program that allows early commissioning for all of the branches. So Navy, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard. So I did that, went through JC there, decided not to get into the military. I had aspirations to go to the Air Force Academy because it's a college prep school. So it was a military prep school for the academies. Most of my friends ended up going to Air Force Academy. One went to the Naval Academy, one went to West Point, and then 3 of them went to Air Force Academy. And I chose not to. Went to Cal State Fullerton, got a degree in political science. After with aspirations of becoming a lawyer, and realized that wasn't really what I was meant to do. Took the LSAT several times. I couldn't get into a tier 1 law school, and decided I just take my chances going into business. So I was working as a restaurant, went into management, BJ's Restaurants and Brewery. I think they had one in Seattle, a couple in Seattle.
Yeah.
So worked my way through the management, got really interested in the brewery side of things. We went on our honeymoon and hatched this idea that we were never going to dig ourselves out of Southern California. We didn't make enough. Neither of us come from families with money, right? There was no, solid leg up. Besides, my parents had a home here that they were going to retire in. They were living in Southern California, waiting for my dad to retire from his second career because he was in the military, 30 years in the Army. They retired and then started a career. On his way to getting his second retirement, they had a house here. So we moved into that house to give us, a solid ground. And my wife became pregnant 2 months after we moved here.
Wow.
And we decided to settle in here and
Nice.
stay here. So got into real estate right away. And I've just been doing real estate ever since. Worked for Verizon for a small amount of time, but then right into real estate.
Yeah, me and my wife grew up in SoCal. So before moving to Seattle, that's where we started. We were in San Gabriel Valley.
Oh, okay.
So not too far from where you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and the Orange Curtain, as it is called there, you have a conservative area, which no longer it's really.
That's right.
At all similar to the Seattle story.
Yep.
We didn't necessarily look at it from a political angle, but we did look at it from, cost of living, where we were at in our careers, what we wanted for our life. It was a tough place to get started. And St. George was still really affordable, really, really affordable. In 2016, we bought our first house. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath house. It's actually 4 bedrooms technically. Single level in a cul-de-sac with park around the corner. And, we bought it for $235,000. It was, something that I never dreamed we would have been able to do.
Yeah. And
nowadays that is pretty much out of reach for somebody in that same situation. They wouldn't be able to do the same thing,
Right.
So watching what's happened in, Southern Utah and trying to understand, okay, what caused it to get here, understanding, the moving parts of it, it's been fascinating to learn, and really, so the podcast started back in May and it was centered around, okay, what am I interested in politics? I was always interested in politics. Just the dynamics of it, how it fits into the culture, how it makes America unique, in the world. And I thought, well, it's a municipal election. Let's give information. There was never, especially St. George, there's not one place you can find information about all the candidates on the local level. It's like, well, there's an opportunity for me to engage with people outside of just real estate and build conversations, get conversations going, just get out the vote and see if we can drive people to the polls and make good decisions. Knowing that, as I've watched on the real estate side, COVID is where I really can see how the political class, you talk about, a fractured, environment, is a lot of factors came into like just breaking so many systems. Mm-hmm. So many networking systems, social networking systems outside of, the social media, but like person-to-person networks. You could see all of these things fracture. And the same thing happened at the city. And then you see, from Black Lives Matter, you have these, very liberal ideals, the flames kind of grow from that. And the city, you could see it was almost painful to watch people just not know what to do. And I asked a couple of the people running for city council, what was it like to try to govern, right? Be a city council member during that time. And every single one of them was like, I had no idea what I was doing. We had just, there's no training for that. Right. And so there's a empathetic side to me where it's like, I can see how that was, it's almost, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. I think it's Mike Tyson, right? It was a punch in the face to everybody. And it was like, okay, well, how do we, and so then now you get to see, what people are really made of. You get to see, where are they going to stand strong? Where are they going to bend? I talked about this in another podcast about compromise, right? And what that means and the challenges that go along with compromise. And I think you kind of touched on it a little bit too about this fighting, piece of the conservative belief system. I think there's a lot of validity to that. I think there's a lot of validity to when the ideology is we want to be left alone, and the assumption is that that's it's going to continue to operate that way when that's not what the other side wants. They don't want to leave you alone.
And on top of that, there is an activism part of it too, right? I think conservatives by nature don't really want to be active, right? Like, they want to be left alone, but they don't want to be active participants. They're just like, oh, I live in a conservative's place, so we're going to be okay, right? There's enough other people that'll vote for conservative values that will be all right.
Yeah, your guard's down a little bit.
And so, I think conservatives don't really like to be active, but the left sure does like to be active, and I think you saw that a lot. I mean, like during the election here, they were out in full force, they
were very organized,
making up lies about people, and spreading them on social media.
Well, and I think so. Taking a step back too, and looking at like this ideological spectrum, right? And Matt, who was in the podcast, who was meeting outside when you saw him leave, he was talking about too, whether you're on the far end of the spectrum, whether it's left or right, liberal ideology versus a conservative ideology, it is a spectrum. There's a lot of like these middle zones.
I think of it more of a circle, actually.
Tell me more.
Well, and I'm probably not going to recite all of the aspects of it, but I mean, I think you can easily look up like what the political circles are, that there's very little difference between fascism on the right and fascism on the left.
Agreed.
Right. And so that's where the circle kind of comes back together.
Fair enough.
Right. And so I think that's why it's more of like these fringes out here actually loop back around and touch each other. And so that's why I say it's a circle.
Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. So
just
then,
simply put, but you can do a ton more research on it. There's a lot of information out there about breaking it down.
But kind of going along these lines, where would you draw the line to where it crosses over into, if it is a circle along this journey from one side to the other, where does it cross over? Like where do these, the sake of for if it's a conservative value, and I'll use this, maybe that's not the best transition, trying to understand, because you made a comment about it might as well be liberal. If you're a conservative not willing to fight for it, you might as well be liberal.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a yeah, I guess I'm just having a hard time, conveying the question that I'm trying to understand is like, what would you identify are the singular values that are conservative and not a liberal value?
I don't know that there is such a thing as a singular one.
Because I think this is where the conservative, and I've had a challenge, right? Somebody saying this person's not conservative and they are conservative. What is it that makes them that way? We use this word and it's really fluid.
Maybe it's fluid but maybe it's also that there's not a single issue to really pin it on, right? Like I think there's fiscal conservancy, right? So you want
this is helpful,
to spend, you want to tax less and let the free market work to its maximum potential. So capitalism. There's culture. Right. So like what things are happening, like, I talked about trans ideology in schools, right? Like I don't care what adults do. Adults can go do whatever they want to do. Right. Why is it so important to put it in front of kids? Right. So the kids aspect of it and indoctrinating them in this way. Like why do we need drag shows in public spaces? Right. Why is it like I've heard this community say, you want me to not exist if I can't and if I can't perform hypersexual behavior in front of children in public spaces, then that means you don't want me to exist. And I go, well, that's kind of a strange perspective to have. I mean, like, do you literally believe your existence is based upon pushing this in front of children? Right? Like that's a weird thing to say, that you don't want me to exist when you're discussing about hypersexual behavior in front of children, right? Because it literally means they're defining their existence as doing that. Anyway, so that's just one example of culture.
So thinking about this,
but there's a lot of them.
Because I've had there's my own personal belief. If you were to ask me the question, do you think there should be drag shows in public spaces? I would say no. And should the government get in the way of an organization lawfully going through the processes to hold whatever they think they want to do in a public space if they've gone through the the already established rules, right? If they've gone through and they've submitted their permits and they've done their proper ways of being able to utilize this public space for everybody, whatever they're doing, aside from already existing laws, right? As long as they're staying within the existing legal structure, can they do what they want to do? If a bunch of dudes want to dress up as women and dance around in, the park for whatever, if they're following the rules and processes, I don't see as a conservative, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. I also wouldn't allow my kids to go to the park that day, right? I wouldn't be promoting it. I actually probably would assemble outside of it and protest against it, right? Yeah. Which is also my right to do that, right? And that's where I felt like there was this weird breakdown of a bunch of mistakes were made.
So I think there's two problems with where you're at with that. But I will say, so there's two problems, but I will say what you've articulated is the ideal world, right? Like you want things to be done equally and fairly and follow the laws.
Yeah,
right?
Follow the established rules that we've already.
So what you've said is correct, but there's two problems with executing on that in today's world. One is in St. George, the permitting process has been, I don't want to say that word. I'll say,
say the words. Say whatever words you want to say.
Well, bastardized.
Okay.
Right. They haven't been followed correctly all the time to 100%. And so what that does is that creates ambiguity in executing on that permitting process.
Okay.
Right. So, this thing over here got to bypass I forget the time frame. Let's just say it's 90 days. Whatever the process. So don't hold me to that 90 days. But let's say there's a number of days in which the rule says, hey, a person asking for a permit needs to follow it this number of days in advance. Mm-hmm. Well, that's been broken a number of times.
Yeah.
So now somebody else can break it. Right? So that's just one aspect. But there's other aspects. Is that
the way that
that's an aspect.
But if you were to say, I got pulled over for speeding and they didn't give me a ticket, that means speeding's okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're going into another whole thing about police. What's the word I'm looking for? Where they can choose what to implement or not. Right? They have discretion. There's officer discretion in what they apply. Right? So you're right. They could pull somebody over and they say, I'm in a good mood. I'm not going to give you a ticket. I'll just give you a warning.
Yeah. Thanks to the Santa Clara police for giving me the pass the other day when I was driving my kid I appreciate that. It was very nice. Gave my son a sticker. We were headed to the doctor. Gave me the pass.
All right. You've been like, you might
speed on Santa Clara Boulevard.
You might be the only guy in history to ever get a warning on speeding, but
no, but I guess my only pushback on that is that if other people have been allowed to break that rule in the past, it doesn't necessarily, it undermines whoever did that, giving them the pass, but it doesn't necessarily say that rule, because it's been ignored, still shouldn't be followed next time.
Well, except it gives them room to go to court and sue, which that's what happened. Right? Mm-hmm.
I guess because
I have a feeling legally police discretion is probably very different than city council discretion. Like, I don't even know there's such a thing as city council discretion. There's laws on the books, right? There's regulations, there's ordinances, and those things need to get followed.
Right.
And
fair enough.
And it's actually very bad policy. This is also something that happened recently in St. George. Very bad policy of things like, we're going to create an ordinance, but we're going to leave it up to police discretion of how they enforce it. Like, that's incredibly poor planning.
The RV thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredibly poor planning to say, we're trying to address this one thing, but we're going to create a very broad blanket ordinance, and police will just have to be smart enough to decide when to enforce it or not.
Yeah.
Right. So that's bad. That's bad policy.
Bad policy.
And so I think the same thing is true with the permitting, right? I think there's vagueness in the permitting rules, and I think you basically need to, in order for people not to have a legal standing to say, people were treated differently here and people were treated differently there, I'm being discriminated against because I'm being treated differently. You have to basically scrap that ordinance and start over.
And that makes more sense. But if we were to go back to, so we have this social ideology, right, of how we think society should operate, human culturally, right? We have this cultural ideology, liberal and conservative, and then we have a financial spectrum,
right? And political was the third one I was going to get back to, but I didn't finish my second thing on.
I'm sorry.
No, and this is natural in conversation. You kind of just keep dragging and zigging and zagging. The second thing of where your argument falls short, and again, as you laid it out, principle that you said, it's correct, right? We have ordinances and we have rules, follow the rules. We have laws, follow those laws. Mm-hmm. Great. I already talked about why it falls down on the city council side, permitting side. On the law side, it falls down because we may or may not have clear enough rules about what is hypersexual behavior in public spaces, and so that leaves it. And again, for the law, just like you talked about in your ticket scenario, the police have the option of discretion, so they could say, that doesn't quite cross the line to me. I'm not going to do anything about it. And our police works for our liberal city mayor. So they are going to do things that they are directed to do, right? They're going to make statements that they're directed to make, and they're going to enforce things that they're directed to enforce and not, right? So, so this can be completely solved. I'm not actually for a city ordinance that bans hypersexual behavior in parks. I don't think we need anything that specific. I think we need what you described, which is a clear permitting process. So we have to scrap what we have and create a new one that then gets followed 100%. So that way there's no legal ambiguity about who's being discriminated against. And then we may have to beef up and require enforcement of sexual behavior in public laws, right? And then make sure that they're consistently applied.
Right.
So great. If men want to dress up and go dance around, okay, that's fine. But as soon as it crosses the line into, twerking your thong in front of children, they should be arrested. And then this will stop. Right. So the punishment can't be, oh, we're going to arrest you and then we're going to let you go. Right. Like there has to be, an actual punishment, right? So there has to be increased penalties, and correct enforcement. And then I'll have people tell me, oh my gosh, well, I think, and I don't know, maybe it's true. I think girls dancing at cheerleading events is more provocative. Okay, let's put an officer there. All right, if a cheerleader is twerking in front of kids, all right, maybe they should be arrested along with the adult that authorized that dance move in front of an audience.
So part of this,
let's create fair laws.
But part of this ends up getting into this slippery slope, though, right? Like we were just saying, is like, okay, well, cheerleaders dancing, we run into this where we end up having this stack of laws created to say based around some specific behavior. So then, are we lining out what is twerking, what is shaking your butt? Like we're defining all of these things as saying these actions, because then we start falling into this fascism side, right? On the far right side, where we're going to control, over control, what is allowed and what's not allowed, right? There's this we start to get into this scale, and we have to decide as a community, which is why I think, to your point, having it be on a local level, having control of it at the local level, and allowing the citizens to decide on what these things are. We create laws that then bind us into those laws that force us to do these things that in other circumstances we might not necessarily have otherwise done, right? So where in my
wait, why is the clarifying of laws going to push us into things we might not have ordinarily done?
So I think what I'm trying to drive home the point is that are we going to put ourselves into a box of rules around what's allowed at every level of all of the things? Or are we going to allow a set of laws that allows some specific structure around what can be done and what ends up happening within a broader sense? What I'm trying to convey, and again, this is just me coming off the top of my head. I'm thinking out loud so everybody understands this. I don't know anything. I'm not smart. I'm here to learn. Every time we write a law, it's a restriction. It's a shackle on the citizen. So determining who makes those laws and exactly what those laws say ultimately leads to additional laws, because we made these laws, now we can create a law around this, right? For example, dancing. We go back to I think it was in Utah at one stage.
Are you going the footloose direction?
I think, but there are counties and communities back in the 60s and 70s that did not allow for specific dancing.
Right.
It's in the schools or in public spaces, or in a lot of cases private spaces, right?
Yeah.
So we have this overabundance of regulation and control versus, okay, where do we draw these lines? Does that make sense?
No, I'm following you. I'll probably add a caveat to your notion of, and I largely do agree, but there's a caveat to your statement of, laws are about restricting people. Well, is murder a law about restricting people, or is it a law about protecting people?
Okay.
Right. Like we don't want people killing other people. So is that a law on restricting the murderer from murdering? Or is it a law about protecting, our individual rights for life?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's,
but is dancing in front of kids that same thing?
It might be. There might be an aspect of like, hey, we should be a community of looking out for the weakest of our community, right? Like, to your point about like, oh, I won't bring my kids to the park on that day. Okay, well that requires you to know that's going to happen there, so you have to be somewhat connected to events in your community,
mm-hmm.
which I would probably venture to say this is the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the people won't know what's going on when mm-hmm. they decide, hey, let's go take Johnny to the park today. Mm-hmm. Like they're not going to know about a scheduled event. So I think
I'm also not going to be aware of what happens if my son tells me he's going to go to his friend's house,
right.
and he doesn't go to his friend's house, and he goes to a park, and other kids have organized in not a marketed way, but all of a sudden there's a sexualized behavior with a bunch of the neighbor kids, in that same area, right? So it's we're going to protect our kids up to a certain point, and then there's the certain part where the world is just wretched. I think is what Paul says.
You're right, but you're comparing a thing of a thing that is not a planned activity
mm-hmm.
Against an activity that is a planned activity,
mm-hmm.
right? So you're right. I mean, like, yeah, your kids are going to be roaming the streets, and they may come across kids that are misbehaving,
mm-hmm.
and you have to teach them how to deal with that when they're out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But this is very different from that, right? I mean, this is an organized event, and especially if you're trying to say, oh, it's an all ages drag show. Well, like that doesn't really exist, right? I mean, like this is a behavior that is intended to be hypersexual.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's trying to like say we're having an all ages strip show. Those words don't go together.
Mm-hmm.
So in any event,
and it goes back to your point, I think, what you make, though, of saying, setting up laws to protect the weakest.
Yeah.
I think that's what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to because the extreme example is a strip show for all ages. There's a reason why kids have to be a certain age to go to a strip club or to buy booze or to smoke or to do do these things.
Right.
All of these things it's a protection to where somebody who is not of sound enough mind to make a decision on their own to be able to go to something like that. So I do agree with you. I guess back to where I've missed out, right? Where I missed in my ideal world,
mm-hmm.
right? Is that there still has to be some kind of regulation as to what
we're missing some things for that to be true now.
I would agree.
But I would agree with you that that's the, and I think I laid this out, right? Like I'm fine. I'm not pro any particular law that says go target the trans community. I'm not for that. Right. I'm for and to your point about stacking stuff, like that's a tough one because like, I probably bet that's just the only realistic way to deal with any laws. Cause I think in general, you want to try to write laws that, are detailed enough to accomplish what they're doing,
mm-hmm.
but broad enough to then, allow for some interpretation and covering of the things that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't know, we're getting into all kinds of hot topic discussions, but let's talk about the abortion issue in Texas that just came up this week.
Okay.
Familiar? Or should I give you the outline?
You give me an outline.
So abortion, Texas has an abortion law, right?
Uh-huh.
That bans abortion at so many weeks. I'm not super versed in it, but I know the hits.
Uh-huh.
But there's like virtually no exceptions, or whatever exceptions they outlined. And I guess there's a process where you can go and say, oh, like this medical issue is happening. And so you can go in front of a court and say, hey, like, I need to have this abortion because this medical condition is happening. Well, it wasn't written specific enough to address a particular disease that a baby might have. And that's like 95%, or let's say it the other way. It's 5% success rate, 5% birth rate.
I think I saw that. I think I saw this.
It's like 95% chance that the baby will die before birth or during birth or immediately after birth, right? You have a 5% chance of living. Okay, so the mother went through the process of trying to get the abortion, and Texas denied it. I think I understand that she's now gone to another state and gotten the abortion, which is probably the right thing. But my point here is Texas didn't initially include this particular disease as a reason for an abortion. So what should Texas do right now? Well, I would hope, if they haven't yet, they should like immediately amend that law to stack on, hey, like, okay, we didn't foresee this particular disease, but this is pretty bad. And it should be part of the reasons why somebody should consider. Sorry, so the somebody meaning this government process that evaluates this exception.
Yeah.
This should be part of that exception process.
Yeah.
So I just bring that up because, when you said about like, oh, I don't like this model of stacking things, I kind of don't know how else you would do it, right? Like you kind of write laws of things that you know about, and then like if something comes up, especially a thing like this, like, okay, it should be added. And I think like Florida's abortion law does include this, right? And they have several other, severely medical issues that can be considered for that exception.
And abortion's is a hot topic, right? Because it goes into this situation where the government's now regulating, what decisions somebody wants to do. I take the argument that all life has a right to life, and terminating an abortion is a lot like euthanasia, right? Where it's like this decision to end your life is a decision that should be made by that individual whose life it is being ended. Having a government, like going back to this piece where she has to appeal to the government to say, can I make this exception or not? And then they say no. That's where I see that as an overreach in the government. My own personal side, as an individual, and what I would encourage anybody in my community, anybody that I could talk to, would be to help them understand, what it is that's aborting a child, and how horrible that in my mind is, because I don't believe in that at all. It's tough though, because not everybody views it that way, and I don't expect everybody to view it that way. And I also I don't like the government involved in every single aspect of my life.
I agree, but I think you also have to understand that when it's the other way, they're also involved, right? I mean, like, so you have the Virginia abortion law, which is we're going to let you kill the baby all the way up to birth, and
horrible.
If it comes out, if you tried to have an abortion but it births alive, well, then you can still have a conversation with your doctor about terminating after birth, right? Like it's just insane, right? So that's, to me, that's an equal amount of government involvement,
which is why this has always been such a hot rail,
right? And but here's the saving grace, right? I mean, like, this is now a state's issue, which is what it always should have been. And this might sound rough, but it's just the truth, right? If you don't like the rules of the states that you're in, well, you got 49 others that you can choose from. Now that's tough, right? But I can say that being that person, right? I had to leave my state.
And you had the ability to do it.
So yes, I had the ability to it, and so yeah, maybe a lot of people don't, right?
I think most people don't. I think I would probably say a sizable majority wouldn't be able to just pick up their life and move to another state.
Well, so I don't know. Will it cost a lot to do it? Will it be an impact? Sure, but everybody has the ability to decide the things that are important to them. Right.
Like you said,
so you
were
can
willing
decide,
to stick in Seattle for the family and the things that you had,
right?
With some of the political shenanigans,
right?
But as soon as it came to trying to educate your kids,
it crossed the line.
It crossed the line for you, and you said that's enough.
And I lost a lot of money leaving, right? So it wasn't all rosy, and timing had a big part. Timing of it more than anything had the biggest point in that, right? Like I left at a really weird peak in the market. But anyway, so everybody needs to just decide, well, where are my priorities? What's more important, right? Like can I take the hit financially to deal with moving because my priorities are dealing with my principles. Mm-hmm. Like that's really just the bottom line, right? Mm-hmm. Like, are you willing to trade some money for your principles? Mm-hmm. And if you're not, well, then stay there. And, like this lady did, she went to another state, for her abortion, which was unfortunate. And again, I wish the Texas law was more like the Florida law in that it accommodated it. And then this wouldn't be an issue at all.
Right.
Right. So,
I think it's we're going to always find in the spectrum, we're going to have a whole bunch of people based off of all their own complexities, their own belief systems we're going to land on two sides of this. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where there's consensus on how to operate that, which goes back to, I believe that it should be at the state level. It's a states' rights issue. Shouldn't be done at the federal level, especially for how massive of a country we are. So transitioning, I think that helps me understand, where you stand on some of those things. Some of those things are, I think some people would say those are conservative beliefs, and some people would say they're not conservative beliefs.
Those things, give me an example of what's a thing that's not a conservative.
Allowing any abortion at any time. Some people would say if you allow an abortion, period, it's not a conservative value. You would be a liberal on that end.
I've not seen a state come out with any law that's, even conservative states come out with a law that says zero days. It's impossible to say zero.
I think
right?
Ben Shapiro would say you're not a conservative if you allow abortion.
I don't think he would.
Really?
Yeah. I think he has a belief, but I don't think he would say that.
You don't think that doesn't line in that?
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. So tell me more about your podcast.
What do you want to know?
Well,
we talk about politics, we talk about business, we talk about real estate.
Right. So tell me, so when you talk about politics, mm-hmm. like what's your motivation? Is it educate? So you're just asking questions? Is it mm-hmm. taking a position and, motivating or,
I don't really take positions.
Why is that?
I take some positions if it comes up in the conversation, but, I think I'm lining up, I'm aligning as much as I can with allowing somebody, especially if they're running for an office or they're holding an office,
sure,
to allow them to say what they believe and
sure.
asking them questions on elaborating if they can on what their beliefs are. And if I have an opinion that's opposing that I feel like is relevant in the moment, a lot of times I'll take my wife, it drives my wife nuts. I'll take any other side. I'll always take the opposing side just to try to push my own belief on, do I really believe this? Am I seeing it from all angles? So I'm always trying to take this opposition approach to it, just to I think it's more engaging for me. I think it's a more, I guess this actually sounds really bad. It's entertaining for me to try and take the opposing view, to have this person, that's on the other side, push their own belief and their understanding of it. I think it's fun to do.
Sure, of course.
And not meaning to upset them. My goal never really is to try to get some kind of emotional reaction. A lot of times it does, which is where I've had to grow and mature in trying to hold those positions and not push somebody to where it's an emotional response, but just really challenge somebody's belief on something. So from the front end, I felt like I could ask good questions and allow whoever's sitting across from me say what they want, so that the people listening can understand that person a little bit better, even if they disagree.
Yeah, I can see asking questions, and of course letting the person, state their views. Mm-hmm. But I also don't see. I mean, again, kind of going back to my position. I think I'm gathering from some of the things that you've talked about that you would label yourself conservative.
I would label myself as conservative. If we're saying liberal or conservative, I'd label myself as conservative. But again, I still have a hard time with the label because there's two sides. There's the socially conservative, there's fiscal conservative, there's, these single topic issues that I can see where, some things I might not be as conservative as others are. And gay marriage, for an example, I'm like, if two guys want to get married or two girls want to get married, and it's, I don't see why that's affecting me.
I actually think that that's a conservative perspective now anyway.
Now, It wasn't always that way.
No, but
for
like,
sure wasn't always that way.
But always, things always shift.
And then from a religious perspective, I think a lot of the evangelical Christian community wouldn't agree with me on that, and that would be, to them a conservative value that we don't rely on. So I could say I'm conservative there, and then again not, right? I think I am, but they don't think I am.
I wonder though
somebody could say that you're not conservative because you believe gay marriages should be allowed.
But right? I wonder how much of their position would be based upon the perspective of
But that goes back to the challenge of the world, like
as our religion goes. We don't want to see that as a religious joining in our religion. But if the state decides to do a civil union, are they less interested in a civil union?
I was going to school 2000. I graduated 2009. From 2007 to 2009, that was a very liberal opinion at the time. I would maybe I'm carrying that with me. Is that a decade ago it wasn't a conservative value. Maybe now it is, but that's an example where I just have a hard time labeling myself as a conservative. But sure, I would probably argue that I'm in that camp. So
bringing this back around to the podcast, then, like why not use your podcast as more of a means for fighting for conservative values? Like inform, influence, be that conservative fighter. Because if not, then what are you doing?
I guess I don't necessarily, I haven't thought enough around saying, okay, the purpose of my podcast is to influence. It's always been around educate and to inform. And if it comes up and I take another opinion, I'm going to voice that opinion at times, but I'm not a political commentary person. I'm not making my own assumptions around it. I don't think I'm in a position. I don't think I have enough experience. I don't think I'm versed enough to stand as a wielder of a particular belief system. And I don't expect to, if I take this stance, I'm potentially alienating some people where I had somebody on, or somebody chooses not to come on. I'll use that as an example. I've had one city council candidate who was running for city council didn't want to do the podcast. I couldn't understand why, and it made me think, okay, well, is it because they think I'm taking one side and they don't want to have this conversation, right? Try to flush it out. Thought I flushed it out, and they still chose not to do it. I want it to be a show that informs people about Southern Utah. Right. It's not solely around politics. It's I don't think I'm the guy to be saying, hey, I'm going to be the champion for conservative values.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say, when you have a segment that you're talking about housing market, that needs to be some sort of politically slanted housing market conversation, right? Mm-hmm. But when talking about politics, I think it's important. I think it's important to take a side, and maybe that's why this person had a hard time, because it. And I apologize. I haven't listened to enough shows to actually form this opinion. That's why I'm asking. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you're saying I don't like you said the word alienate, and that kind of resonated with me in that. Like who are you afraid of alienating, and how does alienating a person impact you?
It's a good question.
Or a community. Alienate, and I don't mean any community. I just mean group of people. If you were to alienate, like, okay, let's say.
Let me use this example, and this might help show you where I'm at right now. And I'm not saying, yeah. I think the purpose behind it, right? If you were to say, hey, what's behind the mind of Robert as he's going through this process, it's not to influence a particular belief system. I'm already going to have my natural bias. Everybody brings their natural bias into a conversation, right?
Right.
So I had a conversation with Michelle Tanner. She was my second guest, and I had a Facebook comment that says, "That guy's a homophobe. I wouldn't listen to anything he says."
Okay. Referencing you.
Yeah.
Referencing. Okay.
There was like a very, very slight statement that I made that basically alienated this person's anything else that I said around what that was. I know I'm not going to, I know there's going to be some people that are like, I'm not getting any value out of it, or right. I don't care what he thinks or anything like that. But I think the perspective I'm trying to take, especially at the early stages of the show, is I want it to be an environment to where it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. I'm going to sit down and be able to have a fair conversation with the person sitting across the table, because I'm not here to grill them or try to influence them or try to change their mind, but create an environment that allows them to feel comfortable saying what they want to say and let the audience make their opinion as to what they believe around that person running for office or holding office or whatever it might be on their own. Does that make sense?
No, I'm following what you're saying. I think there's room for having challenging questions, though, in a scenario like that. To your point about this one comment, like I would say, who cares?
I was just using that as an example. I was just using that as an example of
let's say you had 15,000 comments that said that. Like how would that impact you?
So the purpose of bringing that up, right, is to say, okay, is it me who's making somebody not watch it, or is it the guest that I'm having on make them not want to watch it? It's my goal that they can watch the show or listen to the show and not have to hear about what Robert thinks and learn what it is the guest that they're having on. Because the show's about the guest. It's not about me when I'm interviewing somebody.
Okay. Let's take the interview part out, because I imagine you have many episodes without interviews.
Almost all of them are interviewed at some kind.
Oh, okay.
So if it's about business, I'm talking to a business owner. If it's about politics, I'm talking to an elected official, or,
okay.
It's always an interview format. I'm never just talking to just myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess, and you have other podcast partners that are in here with you if you're not. Okay.
Mm-hmm. All
right. Well, yeah. So a solo podcast probably sounds,
But I think that's also like from what I hear you saying is like, why wouldn't you use this as an opportunity to influence? And
there's a time and place for everything. I'm not saying, you need to like alienate your guest, right?
Right.
You need to somehow show them up. I think challenging questions are important. And I think you see that on every.
I would definitely say, and going back to that, like I like taking the opposing view, even if I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Right. I want to challenge. And I probably, there's times where I've looked back and be like, man, that wasn't as good of a question as I could have, right?
Mm.
I didn't challenge him like I should have, but it's also coming with just experience and learning, because I've never done this. I'm not.
I guess maybe
definitely not trained.
Maybe the motivation for this question or this line of discussion is that I don't think there are enough conservative voices in media, even here, to help inform other conservatives about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think if you have the ability to do it, if you think, and I don't know how many listeners and viewers you've achieved yet, because you're 40 episodes in or something, I think you said, which is, it's great. So I don't know how influential you can be yet, but you'll get there someday. And I think, it would be valuable to have, more conservative voices, because I think that's what's missing here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we have a ton of left activism that even happens here, and that gets out the vote of that loud minority, and they are making changes, like they're succeeding, and we're not doing the same thing on the conservative side. And so I would challenge you to try to be an activist and teach others that we need to get out there if we want St. George to stay conservative, if we want Southern Utah to stay conservative. I mean, yeah.
Who else should I have on?
Well, I'm not going to prescribe to you who your
it's not a prescription,
but I mean,
it's an opinion. Like I would like, because a big reason why I wanted to have you on is because I do feel like, especially on the Facebook forum, you engage, you're carrying that torch.
But Facebook's not real life, and so
I wish it was.
Oh, I don't think I do.
I wish you got somebody's real opinion. I wish we thought. I wish we thought out more in our commentary than it currently happens.
I don't. Okay, this will be a fun conversation, a fun jag about social media.
We should talk about our argument.
We should too,
because it wasn't even. It was an argument, but it wasn't really an argument.
Well, you kind of started off. You kind of started off throwing daggers.
Okay, and help me. Okay, so this is what I said, and looking back, taking my own medicine, saying what I should have. I said your comment was outrageous. Just when I thought you couldn't say anything more outrageous. Yeah. Here's a statement that was outrageous.
Right. That's pretty close to a quote.
Yeah.
So okay. All right. So let's get into that. So
the dagger was that I stated that what you said was outrageous.
No, actually, it's more so. And first of all, keep in mind that none of this hurts me personally. I don't get upset. Me either. I'm not upset about it.
Neither do I.
But it has meaning.
I can tell.
The words have meanings, right?
Words have power.
And your statement of all the things I've seen from you, this is most outrageous. So I would ask you, what else have you seen from me that you would classify as outrageous?
Oh, I don't think I meant of all the things I've seen from you, that was the most outrageous. But I could see how you read it that way. So fair enough.
So is there another thing that I've said that's outrageous?
I think it's always it's within the commentary, like what you've stated just on its own, right? If it's an individual post, I don't think have been all that outrageous, but I think it's outrageous how you respond.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a particular brand of politics that has, it really has infiltrated all sides of the political. There's no party that's innocent of this, but it's a lot of bullying, and I think Donald Trump has really been the pinnacle of it. But there's an insult around a lot of the comment. So I think you made a statement that something that I said was dumb. Right. So
probably I don't remember, but that doesn't sound unreasonable.
Yeah. And so
or unlikely.
So when flushing out an argument, attacking the intelligence of the deliverer of the message, it's a useful tool. In invoking emotion. Right. But outside of that, there's not really any other.
Well, it's probably not inaccurate, right? I mean, the notion that, and getting back to like what is Facebook, and you kind of wish that it would be a place of honest dialogue. Well, it just can't be, right? Like dialogue requires, a lot more words than anybody would ever be willing to write down, right? I mean, like somebody will do a word count of this conversation, and it'll be, like a Facebook thread from hell if this conversation happened online, right? And so,
well, I've seen lots of threads that are like 300 comments long.
No, I know, but none of those are constructive. Like those are all just people talking past each other.
But that's only because they've relegated to the fact that they're not willing to commit to more words. They're not willing to commit to writing down what they actually think, or they want to just do the one-liner,
or it's that Facebook isn't actually amenable to accomplishing that goal.
Maybe.
Right. Which is why I ultimately invited you to have a conversation in person. Right.
Right. And I agree too.
Like I said.
But if we look at the founding fathers, they used to write op-eds to each other all the time. That was the way that they debated each other because there was no way to communicate to the masses outside of writing it down.
No.
They had no other opportunity.
I know, but they wrote,
and Facebook's just an example of that.
No. They wrote page or multi-page letters to each other that let them fully articulate a position. And then
the Federalist Papers is an example of that.
Of course.
Right. But they were posted as op-eds in the newspaper.
Right. But they
Which
were.
Facebook's in the newspaper.
No, it's not. No.
Whether you like it or not, yes, it is.
No, the comment section is not a newspaper.
Because we've allowed it
there
to be.
There are no developed thoughts in a Facebook comment.
There are for those that are willing to do it.
It doesn't exist. I mean, I would challenge you to actually show me where that's happened amongst people who disagree. Because
I've had several pretty great dialogues with people on Nextdoor.
Okay, so not on Facebook.
Not on Facebook.
Okay.
Same exact environment though. Same exact flow.
I don't know.
Same exact. There's no limit in the word count in the comments. It's somebody states something and somebody responds to it, and then another person responds to it, and people like it. And
see, the reason why I think most of those things are not amenable to a conversation is because speed of response is prioritized over accuracy and convincing, right? So like they're sitting on their phone and they got to frantically type a response out, and you can only put so much, and like they're honestly worried. Like if there's
not a time limit to it. It doesn't have to be this. My point is, it doesn't have to be this way. The format is set up perfectly for long form written dialogue. The format is set up for that.
I don't think it is, because the reason why it's not, and the reason why
the culture that pervades it, the
reason why speed ends up being a factor is because I think somebody is worried about another person chiming in and redirecting the thread in a direction that they didn't want to take it in, getting ganged up on by somebody, so they got to quickly get out a barb, so no, I don't think Facebook is real life, and I don't think there's anything constructive that happens in any social media, and so will I say things like that's dumb? Well, yeah, because it's not real life. Right? Like and I probably believe that if you think Facebook is real life, well then yeah, maybe that's a dumb thought. Like I don't think smart people look at Facebook and think this mirrors real life.
So any of the commentary that's stated by you isn't what you really think?
No, I don't know that it goes that far. Is it what I really think?
It's not real life.
It's not real life.
I'm not understanding.
Yeah. Well, it's to say that means, I believe when I write something, I'm writing something that's true. But it would probably be put in a way in which
garners the most likes.
No, I don't care about likes. I
shuts the conversation down.
I don't actually believe it'll shut the conversation down. I think people are in it to just keep the thread going and just fight, and I don't care if that's what they want to do. No, so there's the words and then there's the tone, right? And all I'm saying is that I don't care to engage in a tone on Facebook that would mirror my tone in real life.
Okay,
that's all.
Because it's not worth it.
Because it's a different thing. I mean, like it's not. There's nothing real about it. I don't find it real, and I don't find people who are there to have an intention to have a genuine conversation. I think it's all disingenuous. So I don't have a problem leaning into it. Right? So it is what it is, and I don't have a problem with that, and I'll participate in it for what it is.
Fair enough.
That's all I'm saying.
It's like if you're gonna go into the mosh pit, you got to expect to get elbowed in the face,
and you better be ready to dish them out.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're if you're not, you're on the ground getting stumpled on. Right? Trampled.
Right? Stompled.
All of that.
I like stompled.
Stumpled. If it's not a word, it can be.
I think we should add it. You could add anything now. Well, so I don't know. Do we finish it here? Do we talk about George Santos?
Sure, we can.
That's where it came from.
Yeah. So what? I made some comment basically calling out Celeste
for being an establishment,
which I think this is well established.
She got 2 votes in, so 50. Yep.
And so now we got the ND. Now she's on the NDA.
It's a great example. Like this is where I'm right there to agree with you. The part where I disagree with you about this being an example of the establishment is George Santos is a crook.
Okay.
He swindled his own voter base.
Right.
They voted him in.
Yeah.
On false pretense.
Okay.
And now they have no recourse of recalling him. 0 recourse.
Okay.
Congress does an investigation.
Right.
Finds him guilty of a lot of wrongdoing, not criminally, but within their own investigatory body.
Right.
Right. Just like if I was on a board of, any foundation or any other a board that has its own bylaws and rules,
right,
found to be guilty of a bunch of really crappy things.
Give some examples.
I think one of the big ones that was investigated and found was misuse of campaign finance.
Right. So for what? What did he use it for?
A bunch of different stuff. OnlyFans being one of them.
Right.
Prostitutes, I think.
I don't think I didn't hear. Or some, you could be right. I didn't hear prostitutes.
I didn't look at.
I heard an OnlyFans account, and I heard hair stuff or weight stuff or tanning or some sort of personal appearance thing.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it was like 300,000 or something like that.
Right.
But then there was a bunch of other things that he was investigated on additionally to that.
Right.
And so
no criminal indictment
yet.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean,
sure. I mean, things could happen in the future for sure. Right.
Yeah.
But has there ever been a congressperson?
All that aside, though, the point being is that whatever's happened, if we're going based off of what was the reasoning for expelling a Congress member at the time that they were investigated and it was put to a vote, right? There was enough people to make the decision to have it go to a vote. If it was presented to go to a vote,
right?
The vote came in and 2/3 of Congress voted to expel all of those members of Congress, right? The ones that have been in the past for whatever their reasonings were.
Well,
most
not
of them
for
treason.
whatever their reasons. I mean, like there were actual reasons. I mean, like they broke a law. They were convicted.
They broke rules. They were
convicted of a law. Sorry. First of all, we have to understand that there are like 2 or 3 reasons why you can vote out a congressman, right? And one of them is actually breaking a law, right? Convicted of breaking a law.
Yeah,
right?
but it's
I
not.
think that happened once or twice.
In Article 1, it doesn't say that. It doesn't require a law to be broken. In Article 1 of the Constitution does not require that for expulsion of a congressman.
Sure, but that statement has one of the other reasons that also doesn't apply here, right? I mean, like you know, I don't know. There's so many angles to this whole thing. So,
would you agree though that he conned his voter base?
Sure, yeah. But did he con them any more than Biden conned their voter base?
Their voter base isn't asking whether he conned them or not. That hasn't been presented. The question hasn't been brought up until now. He's just been the vote for impeachment, I think, presented yesterday or 2 days ago.
No. But the conning part is what I'm talking about, right? So like how many resume laws how many resume level things did Joe Biden lie about?
I have no idea.
Let's just say massive amount, right?
Say
like
a bunch of them.
The conning part is what I'm talking about, right? Like the conning part is really about,
a lie.
A lie about their resume, right? And so, yeah, George Santos said things like, "Well, I'm Jewish," meaning I'm Jew-ish, right? Like not actually a Jew, but Jew adjacent or something. I don't know. He explained what he meant by it, right? But like, okay, so he lied about his resume. He lied about a number of things about his resume. Well, we have a ton of other people in power who have lied about their resume, and where's the accountability held on that? Anyway, I'm not going to argue that, and nowhere did I argue that defending what George Santos did. Like that's would be ridiculous, right? Like he did.
So
a bunch
if
of
you
bad
were
things.
a congressman and it came up and he wasn't a Republican, how would you have voted?
He wasn't a Republican.
Let's say he was a Democrat. He did all the things that he did in the investigation.
I would look at what were there
the evidence presented.
The evidence. Well. But again, I'm just going back to like one of the key factors here was he convicted of a crime, and he wasn't, and yet we have others who have been that didn't get evicted.
Expelled.
There's
Bowman. There's 3 of them.
Bowman, right? Like pled guilty, and has a conviction. No vote.
They didn't. No one called for a vote.
Right? Why didn't that happen?
Why?
Yeah, why didn't it happen?
I don't know.
Because we have weak Republicans in
Fair
office.
enough. Okay,
right.
Fair enough. This one was called for a vote.
And there's but that goes back to the source of the problem, right? The source of the problem is the things that get investigated, right? What things are getting investigated? What things aren't? What things are left to.
But I don't think that changes. I don't think that changes the the moment that you're presented with the next thing that you're supposed to do, right? So are you saying that it's the congressman's, that when it got to the vote, it happened, whether it should have or shouldn't have, right, is one part of the question, but it did happen. It was called for a vote, presented with the evidence.
Right.
My expectation, electing a representative in is that when those, I don't want them to abstain from something unless they legitimately don't have any ability to vote on it, right? But I want them to vote the way their constituency expects them to show up, is within their own understanding of the situation. Should that person still be a U.S. congressman or not? I'd expect them to say yes or no. So
I agree. Yeah, they should vote. So there's two things there's one thing that you said, and there's one thing that you didn't say. So on the, should people represent who they represent? Well, yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, like Celeste represents a largely conservative constituency, right? Did she help conservative issues by making that vote? I think no, because now it will be much harder to pass conservative issues. So I think no. I think she didn't represent her people, her constituents. Then the thing that I think, to me, it's important. I guess
that's a great point, by the way.
I'm not hearing if it's important to you or not.
I appreciate that.
Is in my understanding of the issue, and I'm open to learning, but in my understanding of the issue, he did not. There was no means for expulsion, meaning the other expulsions that have happened in the past. So the precedent, which precedent is always important in law, the precedent was the congressman was convicted of a crime. And that didn't happen here. We can go up and down, and I don't disagree with you about the bad things that he did, but the precedent was convicted of a crime. He was not. To your point about bamboozled his, conned his district. Yeah, he probably did. But what was his voting record while he was in office? Do you know?
Nope.
It's like 85 or 95 to 97%. I forget the exact number, but it's like mid to high 90s voting for conservative issues. Mm-hmm. He represented his district to a very high degree, like to a non-arguable fighting for conservative issues level.
Fair enough.
So you can't say that he didn't represent his constituents. He did. He got voted in to be a conservative, and he did that. Mm-hmm. Right? You can say that he bamboozles his way in, and maybe some people wouldn't have voted for him, but there's a lot of people that wouldn't have voted for Joe Biden if they were told in time about his involvement with all of the China things and
his son
and the stuff that we knew, the stuff that any smart person knew that was paying attention, knew that was on the laptop, was not just, it's Hunter doing this stuff. No, there's stuff on there about Joe Biden's crimes.
Yeah.
And they did a survey around, I think the number was 16% of people would not have voted for Joe Biden if they had heard about the laptop.
Right.
Okay, so he bamboozles his way in. He hid in a basement, didn't campaign, lied to voters, and he's still there. Mm-hmm. I don't.
But he should be. He shouldn't be. He shouldn't be there.
Well, and again, but why isn't he? Right? Why isn't he? Right? We've had
goes back to
almost. It goes back to what?
The establishment.
Yeah, because it goes back to what I was saying about what investigations are taking place. Mm-hmm. Right? Like we've had Republican leadership in Congress for 3 years, and they've not done anything about any of this.
That's a good point.
Right? Like now, only now they're starting to do a vote for impeachment. Like this is so long ago. Like how come now?
Right.
Right. Like it needed to be done. 2 years ago
and
or more.
I'm going to concede my point just because the stories and the stuff that I heard made me cringe with George Santos. Like he's a deplorable, he's a type of person that I don't think should be representing in a political, as whatever he is. Con man is not what I would want out of somebody who's representing us in United States House of Representatives.
Well, he's not representing you. He's representing his district.
As a human, just that body of the standard that is existing in that body.
He's representing his district and doing it well.
Not anymore.
All right, great. I will concede that point that I used present tense instead of past tense.
Not anymore. And they'll probably vote a Democrat in, which is going to be difficult for at least that's what the polling shows, I guess, and however true that is. I'm not from New York. I don't know. What his district actually believes, but I appreciate the point. I think you make a solid argument.
All right. I don't know. There were a number of fun things in that thread. I don't know if any other, but we exchanged barbs. Right?
I think we did exchange barbs, and that's where I'm like,
and I guess which almost proves my point about what happens on Facebook.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, like
I allowed myself to get sucked into the mosh pit too.
It's not only sucked in though. You opened the mosh pit.
I started it.
Yeah, you didn't say
the fight.
You didn't say things like, "That's an interesting take, Gary. I'd like to understand more. My perspective is blah." Like let's have a chat.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like you came out with barbs, so I gave you barbs back. Yeah. Right. You called me a boomer.
I did call you a boomer.
you were wrong.
In a roundabout way, I called you a boomer.
Okay. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember now. What was?
I just said. I did. I directly did because now I remember exactly what I said.
Yeah. You also used another word that I called you out as
zinger.
A zinger. Yeah. So this was funny. That
was funny. I actually laughed out loud.
I want to take a little bit of credit how funny that was because you said all for the sake of a zinger or just use the word zinger in your comeback to me, and I literally started writing, great job pulling zinger out of the 50s. The 1950s called and they want their word zinger back. And I said, and before I hit send, I go, oh man, I better look up when that word was created, because how far back was it?
I'm trying he's playing chess, not checkers, everybody.
Could it have been
right?
earlier than that? Could it have been newer than that? So I literally asked ChatGPT.
Nice. Way to go.
What's the etymology of zinger? It came back and said, created in first usage 1954.
Nailed it.
And I go, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, really? I said 50s and it actually was the 50s. So, all right. Pat myself on the back.
Yeah, that was a good one. I laughed out loud at your response to that. That was probably the single reason why I'm like, yeah, I got to get this guy on the podcast. That was a good one.
All right. So anyway,
I appreciate your perspective on Facebook. It doesn't change my thought is that I wish it wasn't that way, and I'm part of the reason why it is the way that it is. So I'm guilty of it.
Yeah, I mean, in my purist perspective, I might also agree with you that I wish it didn't evolve like that. But now that it has, I'm just all in for it. I'm all in. I'm all in. Like there's not a I've not actually witnessed people being genuine. But here's the thing: when they are, I 100% am back to them. Like we might get deep into the psyche of Gary right now, but that's fine. I'm transparent. I know what I am.
Mm-hmm.
For better or for worse, and mostly it's worse. But at least I know I'm a mirror in everything probably.
Mm-hmm.
You can be sure if you're a jerk, you're gonna get jerked back from me.
Okay.
And if somebody's wondering, gosh, why is Gary being a jerk to me? You better know. Well, it's because you're being a jerk.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't have patience for it. And I'm done. Right. I'm like, coming back around to what do I do? What am I doing now? Right. I'm not a slave to anybody. Right. Like I get to do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it. I was a slave, to tech, to my employer, right? And when you have to make a buck, you have to sacrifice a lot. And so I understand, people who are, trying to make a buck right now, like you're in the real estate industry, right? You want to not alienate potential liberal clients that want to use you as a real estate agent. Okay, so I kind of get why you don't want to come out and say and fight for conservative values, right? Like you have a nut to make. All right, great. You don't
yeah,
think,
I don't think. Yeah, I guess I'm not really worried about that.
You don't think?
I don't think I'm kowtowing to whatever whim is in front of me. I don't think I'm doing that, but
I wouldn't call it a whim, though. I mean, I would call it a principle. Have it, believe in
principle that's in front of me. Then I don't think I'm I'm seeking to understand probably more than anything else.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, like I'm lucky enough that I get to do my thing. I think first and foremost, I'm a stay-at-home dad. Mm-hmm. And I love that job. Excuse me. It's the best. It's the best thing. It's the best thing that I've ever gotten to do in my life.
Yeah.
I have 2 older kids, and I had to work while they were growing up, and we're lucky enough to have a younger third child, and I get to be a lot more engaged. So it's fantastic. But then I get to do a bunch of fun stuff. Like I said, when I moved down here, I'm heavily into the Jeeping and off-road scene. So I have a Jeep, and me and a bunch of buddies have been just doing it for a long time. It's a built Jeep, and it's crazy. I race it. So it's a race car, and race it at off-road races. So they're incredible. It's fun to build it up. I do a Jeep podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's
called Jeepcast.
It's called the Jeepcast. Super easy to remember.
Yeah. Check it out, everybody. So there's this big Jeep crowd around here.
Yeah, it's huge. And we've been very fortunate. We're over 500 episodes in. I think we just did.
Way to go.
We just released 521, I think. And it's so much fun.
Is it once a week?
Or
a couple times a week?
Once or twice. Most of the time, twice. We've moved to twice a week, and then sometimes we skip the second episode in a week, but mostly twice a week. And it's so much fun. I mean, it's been bigger and better than I ever imagined it was going to be. Like I've always been in the mindset of just want to build a community, and this started off as just being helpful, right? Even before doing a podcast, we'd bring people over to my garage and we'd help them install stuff on their Jeep, and we'd go and do events where we would train people how to use their winch, the right way. So we've always just had a mindset of being helpful and helping people, and then trying to figure out, well, how can we help more people? And we thought, oh, you know what? I really enjoy listening to podcasts. I pretty much exclusively listen to podcasts, as much as I possibly can. And so I love the format. I love that you can be long form audio and just keep talking, almost like we're doing here. I have no idea what we're doing for time.
Hour and a half, hour 40.
That's perfect. The last several of my episodes have been almost 2 hours.
You had told me that you had listened to some of the podcasts, but you hadn't listened to the whole one yet on mine. And I always go back and forth to like, are they too long? Do I just lose people? But I guess I don't really care because, ultimately what I'm trying to do is be present with the person in front of me too. And whatever time goes, time goes. And
so we've been very fortunate. Great listener base. We regularly get listed in the top 50 of automotive podcasts.
Cool, man. Congrats.
And the best part about it is just meeting all the friends, right? Like last summer, we did a 60-day trip across the country. And at every place we went, there were listeners that came out.
That is so cool.
To meet us.
That's so cool.
I never would have thought something like that would happen. And it was just spectacular. And we did a whole YouTube series on the trip, and it's, I don't know. I won't get into too many details. If you ever want to talk about it, we can. But
no, I really am fascinated. That
there were amazing things that happened that you would just never would have thought could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, like we got into. I'll tell a couple of quick stories. We got into the Jeep factory,
cool.
not just into it, but we got to record with our own cameras on the Jeep factory. The first time that's happened since the COVID lockdowns. Nobody has gotten the level of access that we got. There's a number of videos out there that people have published about, their tour of the Jeep factory.
Mm-hmm. Where is it at?
It's in Ohio. What's the city? I don't know. I'm drawing a blank now.
That's okay.
We got it narrated. Like our guide was the top guy at the plant.
That's awesome.
He walked us around. So nobody else has this footage and the narration that we have. And it was just awesome. Like just awesome that it could happen. Anyway, it was an unbelievable trip.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
It's a cool community because I know it's a big community here in Southern Utah too.
Yeah.
Just because of the geographic area that we land on.
It's Toledo.
Perfect.
Toledo.
Toledo.
Mallory for the win.
My one contribution.
Are you live fact checking us?
Blueform Media for the win.
Thank you.
She's taking notes. She's doing great. Thanks, Mal. Well, I mean, I guess that leads me to the question: why aren't you a conservative podcast? Why haven't you cracked into it? I mean, if to your point, if we need more voices, what's keeping you from doing it?
I've thought about a number of angles to do it. Having the right partner matters a lot. Mm-hmm. Like my Jeepcast partner would be fantastic. We're slightly different on a number of issues. Mm-hmm. But my view is I want to be just educated enough to have conversations. Mm-hmm. And his view is he wants to be excessively educated, which fits his personality.
Nice.
I don't know.
You're welcome here anytime. If there's something you want to talk about, let's do it. I'm open to having that conversation. I've wanted the opportunity to give a platform for values that somebody feels strongly about, and being a conservative and having somebody here locally. I know Michelle Tanner has her podcast that she does already, but if you're wanting to do a regular thing here too, I would love to have you there and we could talk your stuff.
Let's talk about it.
So, aside from that, you doing your own, you're a smart guy, man. And I think you know what it takes to succeed at the podcasting thing, right? You've seen what works, what doesn't work. And so I think it'd be cool to have you build one up and push one out. Had you considered really getting actively involved? Are you part of the Republican Party at all as a delegate or anything like that?
I'm not even a registered Republican.
Me neither. Well, I guess I am. When I moved here, I registered Republican because you can't vote in the primaries otherwise. And so I'm a registered Republican. But I was an independent in California my whole time I was in California.
My whole life I've been independent. I am finding it extremely challenging to change that. But I am getting more involved politically here, and it's getting frustrating.
Jump in, dude. You got to jump in.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with, do I really want to change my independent affiliation? That's the biggest thing. I don't know. And
I think there's a massive fracture, and because this could open up, because one of the angles that I was considering going was getting your commentary on what's wrong with the Republican Party here in Utah, because I can't get somebody who is a part of the Republican Party to really have an honest conversation with me about it. But I think it needs to happen. Brad Green and I are the only ones that talked about that. Yeah. Which I thought was so powerful and really helpful, and just getting people to think differently about parties and that particular situation.
No, I wonder if this small anecdote sums up what's wrong with the Republican Party. So did you go to any of the CD2 debates?
I went to one of them, and then I watched one of them.
Okay,
just to prepare, because I interviewed Bruce and Celeste.
Right. Was that pre-primary or post-primary?
Pre-primary.
Okay, so yeah, so I went to the very first one, at least the one that was here local, or maybe they all were here local. No,
one was in Cedar, one was up north, and one was down here, one on Tech Ridge.
Right. And one of the questions that the Republican Party asked, the chair, or whatever his role was if you're elected, what are you going to do for the Republican Party? And I'm like, how is that question going to help any of the primary voters or any of the delegates who are going to be voting? That's not a question that helps people decide. That's a question that tries to get somebody on the hook, a candidate on the hook for what are they going to do for the party if they get through the next level. Yeah. That's completely self-serving. Why do we need that? Why do we need a self-serving party? Anyway,
but it also tees up a question. It also tees up a question that doesn't have any. It doesn't actually give any clarification.
It won't give any. It doesn't.
And I've had a problem with almost every single debate that I've seen at the city council level, at the state level. I would say that the current presidential debates shows a lot of this as well. Is these questions that requires the candidate to take it in a different direction.
The Megyn Kelly one was absolutely fantastic.
I will say this, but I want to ask, because I do have to run too. I got an appointment that I got to get to.
All right.
Who's your current candidate for president coming up in this next year? Because this is gonna be the first. This is our first episode in January is when it'll roll out, because I already had 2 recorded that are going to go the rest of December. So we're recording this December 15th. Christmas is coming up. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year is when it's Tuesday in January that's going to release. Who's your current candidate? If you were to vote today.
So I
think a lot's going to change, but
I think a lot. I think there's chances for things to change. I mean, I think if you look at the polling, right? I mean, like Trump. Is
outside the polling though. What do you think?
No, but polling matters. I don't know how you can assess outside of polling, right? I mean, like who's going to get through. I mean, there's 2 stages that happen, right? Like we got to get through a primary, and then you got to vote for president, right? So, so I mean, I don't see a way right now, where Trump doesn't win the primary. Like he's so far ahead. There's lawsuits and stuff, and then there's a bunch of things that have happened in the last, just couple days around, delays of some of the cases. Like many of them might get delayed past the election.
Yep.
And
Jack Scott investigation's big.
Jack
Scott, the prosecuting attorney.
Jack Smith.
Sorry, Jack
Right.
Smith. Yeah. Him.
I thought you said Jack Scott. And
yeah, Jack Smith. I think that's changed a little bit too of this potentially delaying that current case he's got going on. So I think you're right. So, but then give me your top 2. Give me your top 2. Because if Trump's on the ballot, you'll vote Trump.
Yeah. So okay. So my top 2, I guess it's easy. It's Trump and then Vivek. Like Nikki Haley is a warmonger, and completely embroiled in the establishment.
I love that you said Vivek. He's my guy too. Yeah.
Well, Vivek is squarely America first. So like policy wise, America first, right? And that's shorthand for a bunch of policies, right? Like, what does America first mean? Okay, well, there's a bunch of policies behind it, so I'm just using shorthand.
Yeah.
DeSantis. He's done a great job in Florida. I think hands down. Kristi Noem is up there. He's up there. We have several really good governors, but he's up there. He's done an amazing job in Florida. He's just made a bunch of mistakes, right? I mean, early on, trying to get the establishment dollars, right? Like getting an endorsement from Jeb Bush. Like, who needs that? Like, literally out the gate, you sought an endorsement from Jeb Bush. Like, that's the wrong guy to be getting an endorsement from. Nobody cares about that. As a matter of fact, it like hurts you more than helps you. And chime in with your opinion anytime. I see you smiling, but I mean, like, I love to hear your opinion.
I think you made a good point, because legitimately, like, who cares about Jeb Bush?
Yeah.
History hasn't.
And I just don't understand. Like, he's just a little weird. He's just got some weird things. I mean, like, you look at his face, you look at his mouth movements, like in the like. Who? Okay, wait, this is not a presidential thing. I'm not evaluating somebody's president, but who licks their lips when they have wet lips? They go side to side, a full side of your mouth.
I think I just
to
licked
the
my lips
other
too.
Side of your mouth. But nobody.
I'm not like super self-conscious.
No, but if you lick your lips, don't you just like, do a quick that and then like rub your lips? Like I don't know. Yeah,
I think
it's super weird.
To your point, I think Vivek doesn't, because he's not a politician. It's hard to say, okay, what has he done? You look at the history and you look at all the other candidates. I think he has a clear roadmap of where he wants to go. He doesn't have, he's not having to defend a lot of the things that, all these other candidates are having to defend. So being a politician these days and making a change, right? You say one thing, that thing's going to be carried with you, right? You're going to be always, on the hook for that kind of a thing. But I like Vivek too. So
he's just right on almost every issue.
I said this early on, because I listened to an early podcast. I guess it would have been like June or early on, as things started heating up, and he wasn't even on like any of the polling, nothing, right? He just didn't exist. But I listened to him. I'm like, he's like all of Trump without any of the baggage of Trump.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like,
and he just kept growing.
They're both America First policies, right?
Yeah, it's almost eerie. It's almost like the alignment that the two of them have in their trajectory too, like leading up into their first run and all these things. Vivek being obscure, right? Most people didn't even know who he was. Where Trump had name recognition, at least on his side, but to the pro and the con, where Vivek was, nobody cared, period.
Right.
It's been amazing to see how he's risen up, and then he's having it. He doesn't have an opportunity to get establishment dollars. That's been shut down for him. So.
Is Vivek your number one?
Yeah, right now.
Do you think he's going to win the primary?
I don't think he's going to win the primary.
Right.
I don't think so. So, I mean, if I was to vote in the primary, though, I wouldn't vote for Trump. I just wouldn't vote for Trump. I think I have a lot of. I think from the beginning, I've had a hard time looking at him as my ideal representative for America. I think he did a lot of great things while he was president. I think there was a lot of mistakes, but he was a president during COVID, man. Like I just can't help but say he did everything he could with what he had. He made some mistakes. Everybody's gonna make mistakes.
Yeah, he made mistakes.
And so I like Vivek because it's another out of the box thinker, somebody outside of the establishment that's going to look at it from America First perspective. I like all those things.
If you have a Trump Biden matchup, who do you vote for?
Who's the Libertarian candidate?
All right, great question. Let's say
because the last vote Trump Biden election, I voted for Gary Johnson. So
right, okay. So I mean that's honestly that's bad, right? I mean like that's equally voting for Biden.
That wherever you the road from here to there. I can
clarify that too.
Well, the road from here to there, I'm still going to vote for all things being, whether I'm playing the game and saying, oh, well, these are the only two, one of these people are going to win or one of these people aren't going to win. I don't subscribe to the fact that's like, well, because everybody else is going to vote for one of these two, I have to pick one of these two. I don't think that, that's not how I'm ever going to vote.
Well, so, but here, so in Utah, it didn't matter. So my statement was actually not true, right? Because in Utah, it didn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. Like in Utah, there was enough, there will be enough Trump votes that you can afford to vote your conscience.
I can always afford to vote my conscience.
Well,
I think everybody should.
No, I don't think so actually. So I'll give you, no, true. I'll give you my example, right? Like, for CD2, I did vote for Celeste. Because what would be worse is if the Democrat won. So now, was there probably enough margin in Celeste votes? You know, like if you have an R next to your name in Utah, you're probably going to win, right? So, was there enough margin where I could have said, oh, I really want to vote for Brad instead? Probably, right? Like my I was well more aligned with Brad. And I talked to him a number of times. I said, hey, I want to help. How can I help you?
You voted for Celeste though. You didn't help him.
Well, he didn't want the help because once Celeste got it, if it was Becky Edwards that got the CD2 through primary, he would have been campaigning, but he stopped campaigning because he knew Celeste was in the good enough range of an R, where he knew he didn't have a path, right? So he didn't run, right? He was on the ballot, but he didn't run, and I was willing to go to work for him to help him run if it was Becky Edwards. So, but that was his decision, right? Like he told me, like, no, we're not going to be pushing very hard. So like my bigger, and people should think about it like this. What is the bigger philosophy, right? Is it vote your conscience? Oh, I don't like Trump, so I'm not going to vote for him. I'll vote for somebody else. Oh, I don't like Celeste. I'm going to vote for Brad. But Brad doesn't have a path forward to win. But you're taking a vote away from Celeste, and therefore the Democrat might win. Now, look, again, in this case, the margin of victory was larger than all of us in the know voting for Brad. And there's a lot of people that I respect that voted for Brad, which was the right vote here. But not if all of the people not in the know somehow got the message that Brad is a better conservative than Celeste, then it could have put at risk putting the Democrat in office. And that would be even worse. Now, there's an argument to be said, oh, well, it's just 1 year. So let's take the chance at putting a Democrat in for just 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually could have gone along with that, maybe. But then the incumbent always has an advantage now, too.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a risk there. So no, I actually think people need to vote more strategic than just the this is what I believe about my own conscience.
Yeah. That's a fair point. It's a fair point. It takes the engagement though at the bottom line.
And so like, for me, like, for everybody that I knew, I told them, I said, I think Brad's better than Celeste, but Celeste is okay enough to not risk having a Democrat in.
Yeah.
So vote for Celeste. Right. But
it's definitely something to think about, I think.
So I'm disappointed, right? Like she's done exactly what most people thought she was going to do, which is become establishment. Because she was, I don't even mean become. She was establishment, right? Like even her whole campaigning, she never took, and I went to every debate. And I engaged as much as anybody on understanding what she was saying. And she never talked about any of her beliefs to a deep extent.
Yeah.
She always just covered them at the surface to try to not get in trouble, to try to not take a hard position, to try to just appease the most people. Right? And I don't think we need that. Again, if we want conservatives, we need conservative fighters.
I definitely think we need conservative fighters.
Anyway, I have a ton more that I'd love to talk to you about. So, but I know we're going long.
I know you got to
go.
I got to jam. I had fun.
Yeah, me too.
I'm glad to get to know you better.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll meet in the mosh pit. We're gonna meet.
Does that mean more Facebook time?
More Facebook time. Let's do it. But at least we know that we're smiling on the other side of the screen.
I'm there for the game.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for coming on.
All right, thank you.
Gary Henderson. Everybody enjoy the episode. We'll see you out there.